Oh wait, I gotta.
I'm in. Oh,
There you are.
how's it going, man? How was the MMA? That
It
was a
was awesome.
yeah,
It was so much fun.
yeah.
It was a great time, and as from a betting perspective, it was a lot of fun. My super hyper ridiculous contrarian plays ended up winning like 8 units. In the
Oh, cool.
betting streets, it was pretty cool. And then to upstage me by like an incredible amount, one of our dudes freaking took down second in the big GPP all by himself for 100K with like 10 lineups. Just so insane. Number
Yeah,
one, that he was able to get the unique lineup and was able to get there. Really great for him. And you could just tell by the way he was commenting that it's like really big money, and
yeah,
he's really pumped about it, and had some really good things to say about the community too. His name's O2. Um,
yeah. Shout out to him for sure.
Huge shout out to him. That made my whole day. I mean, to say the least. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Well, that's awesome to see. I mean, I was so stoked when you texted me that, and then I looked at our Discord and was blowing up with it. I was really, really happy to see it.
Yep.
He's a good dude, and definitely happy for him, man.
Yep.
And speaking of winning all the money today, you got to do a little better. You came in third last week. We're expecting you to go in the right direction here.
I failed. I failed miserably last week. What can I tell you? But I still think the weirdest thing about the thing last week was that I actually was duped by somebody in that lineup. It was
Yeah,
really strange.
It's been tough. I mean, it's been tough to get off of some plays. You're gonna have. I think.
No, it wasn't even that. It was that even like some ownership was really low. Just somebody happened to have stumbled across the same lineup.
The same build, yeah. It's wild. And that millionaire, man, I mean, I promise you enter that in anything else, it's probably fine. It's probably never going to do.
Yeah, it was probably, no kidding.
But
in any case, we'll take a look at today. So you want to just kind of like lead me along and ask me what's going on?
Sure. We'll drop in. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. I've got a pretty good number of Chicago and KC stacks. I know those are they're more on the chalky side. What I'm doing to try to get a little bit different, I have a ton of Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland on the other side against Miami, who I think is going to be really popular. The Miami side, but it's really hard to get like a Waddle and Hill lineup that makes sense. And the way to do it is to play Brissett with Peoples-Jones and either Bryant or Cooper, and you can do it. You're going to have the Waddle will be the low owned guy in that game. So I think that's good enough to get a little bit different, to try and get like a nice 5-man stack with Brissett at the quarterback rather than Tua, just to save a little bit of the money, because you do need to save some places. The other thing that I have an uncomfortable amount of today is Najee Harris. It's a price point thing. We've seen an up and down thing with the New Orleans defense. And they've looked great weeks and some weeks, and they've looked horrible other weeks. But I'm willing to sort of gamble on Najee Harris on the PPR side of things, just playing for the upside at 5,500. I also think that using Singletary is probably more viable today than usual, if you want to go for another cheap running back. And I think that, the problem is I wanted to use Mostert and Wilson. But Wilson, I feel like cuts into it enough. And I feel worried a little bit about the same thing with Jamal Williams, although he did have 24 carries last weekend against Chicago with the way their defense is. He's another one you could use. But that's to get off of the obvious Dameon Pierce chalk. And I think it's good chalk in relation to this slate, but it is tricky to get the price in. And then I'm curious to get your thoughts on Pollard here. I know we're going to have to speculate. I think there's still a chance Zeke doesn't play. And I think if Zeke does play, they should know by now that Pollard is their number one running back. So I like the idea of using Pollard in that late game. That's my other. I'm just going to take a quick look and see if he's even projecting for any. Like, I just feel like the projections are off on him. And he's looking. You've got him like I sort of agree with your projections more than I do the SaberSim ones, because they've got him at like 8%. I think he's going to end up somewhere in the low teens, but he's a guy I find in a lot of my lineups as well. So what are you doing? What is your sort of the games you're targeting, and is there any game that's getting different, or is there certain plays you're using to get different? Because I know you want to try and find some spots to get different here.
Well, first of all, I think we should talk about some of this injury news. Um, I didn't realize that like Kyler Murray's like basically out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Not that I was going to play him, but listen, it certainly reduces the efficiency of everybody on the
Well, yeah,
passing game.
Kyler Murray, and on the other side, no Stafford.
Oh, so Stafford's not in either?
He's supposed to be out. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I believe that game has become unplayable.
I'll tell you what's playable is the defenses.
With the exception, that's what I was going to say. With the exception of the defenses, but keep in mind again. Remember that depending on who the backups are or whatever, I don't think that. I think this game is going to be the Rams like to run anyway. Arizona really hasn't been able to run.
The Rams. Let's change it though, because the Rams have.
They can run. They like to run.
Right.
Who's the quarterback going to be for the Rams?
John Wolford. Yeah.
I mean,
the guy who's still in play for me in this game is Tyler Higbee. He's 3,600.
Is Colt McCoy going to be the quarterback, I presume, for Arizona?
Colt should be the quarterback for Arizona. And we've seen Colt do some good things in the past. You know what I mean? At 4,900, but it's just not enough savings off of real actual quarterbacks for me to play him. You know what I mean?
So I'll answer your question though, as far as what I'm doing right now. So I hesitate to change my process off of like a good week and a good couple of weeks. So I don't really want to change the way I've been kind of like playing with the combination of SaberSim and my projections and like my gut and all that stuff. So I'm just going to tell you what I have right now, and then also tell you, where I think I'm underweight, where I should have more. I feel less comfortable about. So as far as overall like team stacks, I do have I'm pretty chalky. Like I have Kansas City, Miami, and Jacksonville as the three top ones. The one piece of Kansas City that I brought up the other day that not quite getting to yet, but is Kadarius Toney. You could just kind of see them that like kind of the momentum to get him involved, sort of. And now with Hardman out. Now look, Hardman's got a weird skill set, so it's not exactly like Kadarius Toney steps into the McCall Hardman role, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting to him, and that's kind of concerning me a little bit because I have all this Kansas City, and it just and if I'm going to play a lot of Kansas City, I may as well some Toney, but I'm just not getting it. I'm really just making the easy plays, from that game. That being, Valdez-Scantling, certainly Kelsey, and on the other side of that, Zay Jones seems to be the natural run back, as does Etienne. You know what I mean? And Ingram or whatever. And on the Miami side, I guess I am getting to more of those Miamis, but like you said, it's kind of hard to get both of them in. So most of my Tuas are basically just one man stacks. You know what I mean? Just either him with Hill or him with Waddle. But I have to say I was able to get a lot of Hill. And so those are my two top ones. Then Vegas, as I mentioned, they're my next one. So as far as like team stacks and game stacks, I guess I consider myself underweight. Not underweight because I thought at the beginning of the week that Chicago was going to be like so popular and stuff. It's just, it doesn't seem to be the case. Like Fields is going to be really popular in cash, right? But I don't know if they're going to be necessarily that popular as far as team stacks in the GPPs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good call, and I do like them quite a bit. I actually think I'm going to play some Jamal Williams on the other side of that game, and I think where I'm not playing Fields, I'm going to use a little bit of David Montgomery, just because the defenses are bad enough. We know what guys can do with opportunity, and it's just with all the ownership going to Pierce, there's got to be some other plays we can make, right? Like that's just sort of my way of
Well, you
looking
want to talk about running back then? Okay. For me, a running back, I am like currently with the field on Pierce, which means like 50% or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's where I currently am, and you know, I know this is a slate that, I mean, a lot of people have said this is it's not exactly the most, you know, dynamic slate. You know what I mean? It's not the rate to be that high scoring or whatever. And I've heard some takes that, you know, to kind of not to get off the chalk really the running backs, but it's not just so easy to just play Pierce. But with some exceptions, I mean, the chalk has held its own rather nicely at the running back position. Even though, listen, it is different than it used to be, right? It's not like you get these guys getting like 100 targets out of the backfield and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
considering you have to play them anyway, so I'm actually kind of with the normal plays at running back, and those four main plays, which I'm sure everybody will identify, are Pierce, Kamara, Etienne, and Derrick Henry. Like those are now the two one guy you mentioned who's my next highest own, and that's now this is only like 10% or whatever is Jamal Williams. It's just that he always gets the ball around the goal line,
Hmm.
always, you know. So
Hmm.
at 5,900, I think that's worth something. And then
Hmm.
my next guys at running back are I do have Barkley, but you know not with the field really. I'm below the field. I think on Barkley. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
like 10% of him. And then I do have some Devin Singletary. I got two guys for you though. I mean, actually, I like more. I want to talk about some more of these guys. So you mentioned David Montgomery. But I want to talk about the other four guys in my pool because I think they're all very interesting in their own right. So what do you think of it? I'll give you the names: Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Aaron Jones, and Jeff Wilson.
That's a lot of names.
Yep.
Um,
Well, you know, I got to order it.
Jacobs fine. Who were the other ones?
James Conner with no Kyler Murray.
um, not like in love with it.
No, I mean I just have a sliver, but I figure it was
Yeah.
worth talking about.
Yeah.
Not a big deal though.
I think it's okay. I mean, he doesn't ever get there, and I actually think Kyler being out isn't necessarily good for him against a good run defense. I don't know. Not really getting to that one. I'm more interested in Najee Harris and
Yeah,
and
and this and we're going to get to that. I consider a segment like the guys I'm not getting to that's really making me feel gross for not getting to, and that guy that you mentioned is Najee Harris. I think, and I mentioned this earlier. I think Pittsburgh. First of all, I think Pittsburgh's very live in the game,
Mhm.
um, and I think that playing the Pittsburgh offense makes a lot of sense. You know, the Saints still have that, you know, undeserved or whatever, this reputation for having a good defense, which I just don't think is accurate. Um, and we talk about this in other sports. You know, you have these young guys. These young guys have a lot of upward volatility. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you have, you know, the perfect combination of these guys between Pickett, Pickens, right? And Fryermuth. I mean, these guys have upside. You know what I mean? They have career upside. And then Najee Harris too. Najee Harris. You ask everybody, do you think he's been in the league for like 20 years? You know, I think it's like his third year, or like his second year, or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Second year.
So I think all these guys, you know, they're at home, and we've talked about this with Pittsburgh the whole season. I mean, they bring their game every single week, and that's the guy. Najee Harris is the guy that I wish I had more of, which I very well might, you know, and this is why we do these shows. I might just jam in like a little bit of him, you know, just even though my projections aren't necessarily getting to him. I really
Mhm.
like that idea. I really like that. The other two guys I mentioned, I figured I would mention the Aaron Jones thing. It's kind of tough to play any running backs against Dallas if you want to know the truth.
Mhm.
But the Jeff Wilson one was kind of interesting to me, only because you know that people are going to play all this Miami offense.
Right.
and I think you get a little kind of cutesy leverage off of that by playing the Jeff Wilson. I just don't know. I mean, they just love to pass the ball and throw it down the middle of the field and whatever. And I just you play Jeff Wilson and I think you're asking for 9 fantasy points in some variations.
I kind of feel the same way, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I mean, these are just the guys that I had, and and listen, just to go through the entire running back play, one other guy that's kind of not even a pivot because he's not going to be owned, but I happen to think that Khalil Herbert's like better than David Montgomery in general.
Oh, I think he's definitely better than David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I was saying in terms they're not giving him the chance.
Yeah. I have like one lineup with each with Montgomery.
Yeah, we're on the same page with that. Yeah, and so speaking, let's talk about some of these cheap because we have some interesting cheap wide receivers.
Okay.
None of them are well. Okay, it's always interesting, I guess, when nobody's really stands out as being that great.
Well,
but
I have one guy I have 30% of, so we'll talk about that.
Oh, really? Okay, so Mac Hollins, you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, Marvin Jones, and Zay Jones. A lot of Joneses.
You got them all. Yep, you got them all.
Those are the ones, right? And those are the guys we're spending down on, I think. I do want to point out what you said about Tony.
I got a couple of others, but yeah.
Yeah, just real quick, just about your Tony point earlier. Yeah. I think that it's a really good play on FanDuel at 5,500. Okay. He's really cheap, percentage of salary wise over there. So I actually have him in my main build over there. So yeah. Anyway,
I've got some other cheapos. So I've got some other wide receivers that.
Who's your 30%er before you tell me the other one?
It's chalky. It's Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Okay, that's
I mean, it's just such a natural run back for.
I mean, you're well ahead of the field still. That's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll give you other guys that you didn't mention that I have over 10% of that are cheap. You mentioned Peoples-Jones. You mentioned Marvin Jones. You mentioned Zay Jones. I got all that stuff. You mentioned Mac Hollins. We already talked about this. Valdez-Scantling, but I imagine he's gonna be popular. But I got a couple of others. So I'm getting like over 10% of Michael Gallup.
Interesting.
At under 5K, and he's going to be very, very low owned. I'm also going to be a glutton for punishment and go back to the well with a 10% stab at Khalif Raymond from Detroit. And then, I mean, if you really want to try to, if you really want to lose, or if you want to, win $1 million with a 3K guy, that I don't think people even knew still played. I'm getting like a non-zero projection on Keelan Cole for Vegas. So I'll just throw it out there into the ecosystem and see what happens. So that's a 3K. That's another cheapo that I got in there. So Keelan Cole at 3K, just for, as I like to say, just for funsies. And one other cheapo from the Giants game I'm getting, cheapish is Darius Slayton.
Yeah, I hear all of that. The Giants thing just makes my head spin.
Yeah,
I have this really bizarre feeling that this is the week Kenny Golladay actually does something.
Oh my God, that's so funny! I literally didn't know he was still on the team.
They announced that he was in today, and I don't know what's going on. I mean, Slayton, Robin, they just don't. There's going to be a lot of running in that game in general.
Yeah.
But I hear you. I mean, we're sort of diving towards some other ones. Another one that's showing up for some people as a maybe projection thing. It feels really wrong against a team that completed 5 for a team that completed.
Where'd you go? I think you disappeared, Mr. I think you disappeared, Bobby. Yeah. I'll wait for him to come back in. Yeah, he disappeared off the face of the earth. It was good to know him though. If anybody wants to co-host a show. Just
So-
oh, there he is. There it is.
So we had we had a power outage just now, which
Ooh,
means that
what does
I'm
that
now
mean? What does
using-
that mean?
so the power turned back on, but the internet hasn't turned back.
Uh-oh. Here he goes again. Uh-oh. Right. Yeah, that was kind of weird, BBF. But you know what? If you remember that game, it's not as if they first of all, Hardman was in that game, but it wasn't as if anybody was really targeted by Mahomes. I mean, if you remember that game, he was like literally scrambling all over the place, and just basically whoever was in the neighborhood, he was just going to try to throw to. So it's not as if they didn't try. You know what I mean? It's not as if they didn't scheme for Valdez-Scantling. Almost every one of his plays was just like completely ad-libbed. So yeah, okay. So here comes Bobby's. Might come back again. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And we'll talk about FanDuel in a moment. Yeah, this Pittsburgh game is starting to really, I know you can play Kamara, you could play Landry, you could play Olave, I guess. And then on Pittsburgh, I know you're going to play. I think that game can be really, really interesting. And when we get off of this, I might up my exposures there. Let's try again. Hey, let's try again, Bobby.
So we still don't have internet here, but I'm using my phone, so hopefully this works. I'm trying to hotspot through my phone.
Oh, goodness. So
it should be okay because where we are in LA. So sorry about that. That was really bizarre.
Yep.
I don't know why that happened. Let's see. Sheets. So what did I miss? Questions and thoughts wise, did you happen to notice anything?
No, I was just basically stalling and waiting for you. You were talking about the wide receivers and stuff like that, and BBF, you're saying that you're a Devils fan. Devils won 9 in a row. I actually just on the train back from MMA, I was with some guy that was coming from the Devils game last night, and big Devils fan from Long Island, which is very rare actually. Anyway, okay, so what about well, let's just continue on positions, I suppose. Like, what do you think about tight end in general?
I've got a lot of Higbee. I don't care. I actually think that it might benefit him having the backup quarterback, safety valve and everything. And Arizona is one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive team against tight end position in football. So I like Higbee as a cheapo. I have some Moreau, some Dulcich, and then I have some Kelsey in my Mahomes stacks, and even some in my my Trevor Lawrence stacks. So those are my main guys. I have a little bit of Gesicki in the Miami stacks and a little bit of Evan Ingram, who I'm using a little more on FanDuel because he's really cheap over there. So that's where I am.
Yeah, you got pretty much all the tight ends I have that have more than 10% of it. Kelsey, Ingram, Dulcich, Gesicki, Harrison Bryant. I don't know if you mentioned Harrison Bryant.
Oh, Harrison Bryant. Yeah, I've got him.
And Freiermuth and Foster Moreau. And the rest are. I actually don't know how much Higbee as you have. I guess that's the difference. And I don't know. And I probably should have more Dalton Schultz if you want to know the truth, but I don't.
That's one I feel like I should have as well. So I'm going to probably make a point of getting a little bit more Dalton Schultz.
I'll tell you who I should have more of. I should have more Stefon Diggs. That's what I. But
this is okay. This is what I was going to get to. Are we making a terrible mistake because of the injury? Rumor that we're not just doing the normal thing where at least 10% of the stacks are Buffalo stacks every week, which I think is just the way you should play. Shouldn't we have some Josh Allen and Diggs? I mean, shouldn't we get involved in that game, even though people are worried to now? Especially because people are worried to now. Like, you're going to get low ownership on the most powerful, offense, most of the weeks this season in football. I think it's interesting. What do you think, Sheets?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, actually.
Yeah.
When I didn't even I completely had put out of my head that he was even going to play.
Yeah, I know. It seemed like it was trending that way. So I'm going to get some of that. So I mean, that's my big notes of things that I need to change. I need to get more Matt Collins. I need to get more Derrick Henry, more of the Bills, some Khalif Raymond, some Barkley, and some Schultz, who I don't have much of any of those guys right now. So that's what I'm going to change.
As a matter of fact, I don't even think my projections have Josh Allen in them. I mean, I have to read. I'm gonna redo everything anyway. But I literally didn't even have it. I didn't have a thought that he was going to play.
Yeah.
And you want to know why? Because I listened to all this freaking idiots over the week. There was like 100% sure he wasn't going to play. I don't know. I mean, he always plays. I don't know.
Yeah, and he, I mean, it does have a real shoulder issue, but
okay. So you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm happy to go with it, and maybe you say that shoulder issue means more Dawson Knox.
Hold on. I mean, let's rewind. I mean, what are we doing here? Why are we just not playing Buffalo? Honestly, I mean, you get. There's a non-0% of the people who think he's out. If you want to know the truth, if I thought he was out, and then you know exactly who you're running, who you're playing on the other side of the game, between Thielen and Jefferson, or even the
terrible, like the worst matchup in football for both those guys.
Okay, but I mean, talent here. You know, it's just like,
In fact, I think that if you wanted to get creative, maybe playing KJ Osborne even might make a little bit of sense, just because they're going to have to throw the ball, and you've got really good corners that are going to eat up a little bit of Jefferson and Thielen. I do have Thielen actually in a pretty decent amount of lineups already. He was a guy I liked as a filler. I like him on FanDuel too at 5,900. Playing Thielen and Tony allowed me to get Kelsey and Devontae Adams together over there, which I thought was kind of like a cool thing to do. It's not a good matchup for Adams either, but I don't think it matters for Matt.
Hang on. Let's talk about this just a little bit more before I forget to do something, right? So you have Josh Allen, and one of the reasons that people, I don't say not struggle. I mean, like, one of the things that people, when they don't want to stack him necessarily because they think that he might have, the rushing upside might sometimes take away from the receivers. If anything, like you were just kind of alluding to, if he's got a shoulder issue, the last thing they want him doing is like just making beelines for the end zone and running, and diving. I think it increases like all these receivers. I don't know. This
oddly, his rushing prop didn't change. It's 43.5, which is pretty standard for him, and it's actually a pretty decent rushing prop for a quarterback. But I hear you. And I think this is. I think it's a good way to go. I wanted to ask you about another guy who we just got brought up in chat by your boys at Poker X Factor. Any chance of Taylor finally breaking out? So my answer to that is I like Taylor, but I especially like him on FanDuel where he's only 7K. He's a better FanDuel player in general anyway because he doesn't have as many receptions as these other tight ends get. I mean, the other running backs get. Excuse me. But you have, if there's a time to break out, it's against the Raiders, right? Like that's a team that can't stop the run. And I think this is we just saw Kamara put 43 on him. This might be a good Jonathan Taylor game here today. And I definitely encourage getting some exposure, but especially on FanDuel at 7K where he saves you a lot.
Yeah. The Colts last week had the lowest yards per play of any team in any spot the entire season. That was without Taylor.
Yep.
And that was obviously at New England. So now you get Taylor back, and it's against the Raiders as far as their ability to stop the run, which is pretty much zero. I think that's a pretty decent idea, actually.
Yeah, and I think the Taylor Adams on FanDuel is something that could really pay off. Devontae Adams is, and I just like Devontae Adams at low ownership. I'll always be the guy who tries to get some of these guys in, and Devontae Adams showing up, about 8% today on your projections. Goldie's got him at 9. By the way, check out Goldie's and Sheets projections, you guys. It's pretty interesting. They're pretty similar, but there are some spots where they're a little different. But I really like the idea of getting to Devontae as a spend up. So playing a Taylor Devontae is in my main build on FanDuel as of right now. I've basically given away my whole FanDuel build, so you guys know what I have on FanDuel, I think, by now.
Well, what's his name? Eric or K9 wanted to go over FanDuel, so
yeah, let's talk about some FanDuel because I think that the pricing on Thielen Kadarius Toney, Evan Ingram, and Jonathan Taylor they're all gaps enough where that's where I'm going to play them is on FanDuel.
Well,
I also think that, like I'm doing on DraftKings, I'm using. It's very weird to do, but the other speculative side of the Bills situation is to play the Vikings defense, just because they're so cheap. In case he really is banged up.
And like we said, we got there with the Jets against the Bills last week.
Yep. Yeah. It's. I mean, it happens. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Guys, fire out any more thoughts or questions. I can't see the old ones because I'm now, I had to reset my stuff here. So any thoughts or questions, please feel free to pop on in the chat.
I'm actually redoing all my projections now hopefully with Alan in.
Okay.
I want to see if that has to. I mean, just has to.
As far as what's interesting is this is a good day, I think, to get weird and to get speculative because there just is, none of the chalk spots feel so great, even guys like Tyreek Hill, who I love, he has to get a huge number at that price for that to make sense. Amon-Ra, we've certainly seen that go both ways. I do like him a lot for what it's worth, but he's the highest owned player, and you got Jared Goff throwing the ball. For what it's worth, I did throw in a Jared Goff lineup. Juju Smith-Schuster, I like a lot, but I don't think this is like a lock anything with KC ever, except for Kelsey. Darnell Mooney, who I like, but I think you can switch that over to Claypool. I just don't feel like there's any really, I need to do this kind of things. Just sort of where I'm at. So I want to get a little bit weird with it and throw in some of these weird plays. And even at running back where, this is the most of any week that it feels like we should be spending up, but we have very suspect value receivers.
I don't know about that. I think we went over a couple.
We have a lot of them, but we don't have any that really, I mean, we've had this situation all year with most of these guys, and the matchups are a little bit better, but Mac Hollins in a tough matchup, and even without, only's had one really, really good game.
Mac Hollins, that's a tough matchup. Yeah, the Colts.
And he's like the second best pass defense in football.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which I'm still okaying it though because I'm playing Devontae Adams. So, and I think you're going to see as the season goes on that they just are really bad in general. They're just a bad football team. Their offense is really, really awful considering they have two pretty good supers. Pittman and Taylor are awesome, but they don't. I mean, without a quarterback, it's really hard to win.
Right.
So, Titans are missing a couple defensive starters, which is another thing that I noticed. But I don't feel like I don't know. I can't get to the Russ thing, and maybe this is a week you try it though. Maybe you play a Henry, and then you play the Judy Sutton with Russ, and this is the game. I do think Judy and Sutton. Maybe we should think about them a little more. They're in that weird mid 5K range that no one's really attacking outside of Chris Kirk. Those are both pretty interesting pivots, I think.
Well,
I'm gonna make a note of that as well.
And the other thing I would say is that what I wanted to ask, and then something I want to say is Tannehill definitely out for Tennessee?
For Tennessee, Tannehill, I'm expecting to play.
You're expecting Tannehill to play? Okay.
Yeah. Which I think is I guess a bump to their offense in some ways, which is why the Treylon Burks makes a little more sense than he would have with the previous guy who's just basically a runner. But I have Tannehill as starting.
Right. I think that the Denver play isn't bad.
I'm on it a little bit, BB. I can get to that, so I don't mind that. And even if you're not going the full way with it, I think using Judy or Sutton is we can sort of treat them as the former the Metcalf and Lockett, a poor man's version.
That's what I was saying. I mean,
yeah, I think you're right. It's not the most fun team to do, but it does feel like the total feels a little bit too low. I mean, I know that the Broncos just don't score points, but I just don't believe that's going to happen for forever and ever. You do have Chase Edmonds there now too, by the way, for what it's worth. I don't think I'm going to do anything with that, but it's worth noting that he should be, a go today. He'll probably be able to catch some passes if they're trailing, especially. Yeah, I can get behind it.
All right, let me take a look at what.
I like the Broncos in that game, by the way, to win that game.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The 2.5-point dogs.
They're coming off that
tough loss.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Buffalo is firmly in play today.
Mm-hmm. Buffalo, yes, that's so. I announced the other ones I was getting to after the show, and then Judy and Sutton I'm on there, and potentially a Russ stack with Henry on the other side. Henry's the one running back I didn't get enough exposure to at all. I have like him in one set of lineups here, and I think that could be a mistake. So I need to make sure to get some of him. He's just been, he's awesome, and as the season goes on, he's always gets better and better, and it's a tough matchup, but doesn't seem to matter much with him. Like every matchup's a tough matchup, and he just runs all over everybody. He's run for 100 yards, in 5 straight games? Yeah. And after the duds at the start of the season, he's been awesome. He's had some pretty good matchups in there, though, in all fairness. All right. Anything else, questions-wise or thoughts?
Yeah, what are you doing defense-wise?
Arizona and the Rams, both sides.
Certainly makes sense.
I like the Bills if you can afford to spend up.
That's interesting. You like that, huh?
And I have the Jaguars because they're minimum, and I literally needed every 100 for a couple lineups. And then I have the other one I'm using is I'm going to use a little bit of the Vikings.
Yeah, I like Houston.
Yeah, Houston is a reasonable one. The problem is everybody looks like a good one against New York, and then they don't end up making any mistakes.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of frustrating this year. And we don't have the Danny Jones of old where it was 2 fumbles a game and you were in good shape.
Yeah, so
he had a 4-game stretch, I think, where he had a fumble return for a touchdown every 4 straight games, which is like hard to do. like that's a bad season's worth of it.
Yeah, so this is definitely something I'm going to do. I'm going to play some Buffalo. Like regardless of what I get projection wise, and I think I'll get them anyway, but I'm going to play Buffalo. Regardless of what I get projection wise, I'm going to play Pittsburgh. Those are going to be like my, my gut plays or whatever.
Yep.
4 QB, 4 QB, 4 QB, 3 QB, 3 QB with just one. I want to have some kind of run back. I'm just kind of like doing my my build settings for how many, because like Sabres sometimes they want me to get QB +5 in one lineup. I don't even want to know what that is. 3 for 3. I'll take some of that. Let's apply. Let's see what I have. 2 by 1, 3 by 1, 1 by 2, 3 by 2, 2 by 2, 2. A couple of pure game stacks. We'll get rid of the 5 by 1. And then let me see what I have. So on DraftKings, I'm getting I'm getting 10% pit anyway, so that's good. All right, so I will up Buffalo.
But while you're doing that, I'm just gonna say real quick. I looked at the standings the other night on Friday for the NBA, and I thought you were about to take down your first big NBA one this year. It looked like you were going to win the big one. Did you see that?
It was an illusion.
But it didn't need to be an illusion. It really didn't. There was some things that happened because you were right there, man.
Yeah.
I assume you still had a profitable night because you were up there.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson at running back. I think it's a really speculative play. I don't have any belief that they necessarily think Mostert or Wilson, and Mostert's more comfortable in that offense. I just think they're going to split a lot of the time. Yeah, if Zeke's out, look, I'm playing Pollard anyway, just assuming that Zeke might be out, and even if Zeke's in, I don't even mind the play that much anyway.
I'll tell you. By the way, a team like I'm watching this. Be careful writing this team off. I mean, they got they lucked out last week or whatever, and slowly, but I mean, you don't want to bury Tampa too quickly here. I mean, they're playing
What's the
better.
score?
They're
What's the
they're
score in that
beating
game?
they're beating Seattle 14-3 and about to put the game away. I mean, they're
They haven't, for a team that hasn't played a good game all
yeah,
season long.
yeah.
It's pretty amazing that they're in first place.
They're putting it together though. They're in an easy division and they can, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it's a joke of a division. If Carolina had just an adequate quarterback to start the season, like Sam Darnold even would probably have done, not Baker, not PJ Williams, they
right.
probably would be running away with that division.
Yeah.
Because they've got some players out there. I mean, that Foreman is really good. Moore is really good. The defense is actually, I know they had one terrible game that in general, they were really good for a while. Goldie said he's going to update his projections pretty soon. Kyron Williams for the Rams is interesting. Project Mayhem as a very speculative play. I keep waiting for the Rams to do this, and they've kind of flirted with it. They've flirted with a couple other guys coming in and getting some touches. I don't know how much they're gonna run Williams. It feels like they'll probably go with especially with another quarterback. They'll probably go with Henderson and Akers, still splitting most of the carries. But Kyron Williams, I mean, there is always that chance if he has a good drive or something that he just stays on the field because the Rams hate their running game so much. I mean, for good reasons, the worst running game in football. I kind of think that's an interesting, large, like speculative play. I'd prefer it like on an afternoon slate lineup, not necessarily the main slate. But I think that it's not the worst thing in the world to take a really weird shot like that at 4K.
Yeah.
But again, that also means they have to even if he's good to go and he gets all the touches. Let's just say they don't have any running back who can get 10 fantasy points. So I don't know if he's going to be able to either.
Right.
They're just unable to run, and everything near the goal line, it just goes back. And I think this is going to be a hit day. I don't have one lineup with Saquon Barkley. Am I making a huge mistake against Houston? I might be.
They have the worst rushing defense.
They do. The problem I have with it is if I want to play Saquon Barkley for his likely 30 fantasy points, wouldn't I rather play, because you can't really play both of them on DraftKings. Wouldn't I then rather play a guy like Tyreek Hill who can put up 50, Well, and it's just so hard to get to 50 as a running back.
It's the who has more variance situation, But the way Miami just kind of moves that ball with the pass, like maybe the Hill is a better play. You know what I mean? Like
he's having the greatest season in the history of football in terms of receiving.
Yeah.
And I know Saquon's been really good, but he's been really good, and he's only gotten over he's gotten over 22 fantasy points one time this season.
Right.
It just feels wrong to pay 8,600 for any running back where that's the case. Now, if he gets 2 scores today, runs for 180 yards, and catches 5 passes, I'm gonna regret not having him. But It has to do all those things, and you also have a quarterback who can run on the same team. So I always feel like that takes away a little bit of the running backs rushing upside, sort of like the Jalen Hurts thing, because you will see. I mean, how many touchdowns? I think Saquon has 5 rushing touchdowns this year. Daniel Jones has 3. So he's not getting all of the share of the rushing touchdown upside like some of these other guys are. I'm going to bounce in just a minute and finish my builds, but is there anything else we didn't cover, Sheets, that maybe we should talk about? Is Pollard a must? I don't think Pollard's a must start, but I'm treating him.
You were talking to me about him. So what's the injury news with that?
So Zeke is still questionable. The more I've heard today was that it's less and less likely that he plays. And by the way, even if he plays, why are we assuming that he's the starting running back? And to go even further, why is he the starting running back if he is the starting running back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear to like anyone with eyes who watches them play that Pollard gives them a whole different element. He's got a lot more burst. Maybe you use Zeke for some between the tackle stuff, but I don't know. I'm much more on the Pollard side. I'm on the side of Pollard being a reasonable play anyway. But as of right now, Zeke is still not out yet, so it's a little nerve-wracking to make that play. But you've got some pivots you could do later in the day, because I've got my defense also is that the Arizona and Seattle. I'm sorry, Arizona and the Rams. So you can make some swaps if you want to. I'll
tell you something interesting. I mean, it's like a football thing. This is kind of like a testament to how good Patrick Mahomes is, sort of. So I'm watching Tom Brady, right, just kind of do his thing right now, and being a really good football player, you know what I mean, like and being able to see the field and like knowing what's what is like such a big deal to be a quarterback. And people are, yeah, obviously sheets, but maybe not so obviously, right? Brady, obviously his arm is not what it used to be, but the guy still makes like the greatest decisions in like all football. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the best. And to see him just kind of like march down the field when things are like going, decently for him. And if you have guys that actually also have like insane like physical talent now and can see the field like Mahomes, I mean that's why he's so freaking good. Is Mahomes also has like you can see the field. He's a good football player and he's got like obscene actual physical talent right now.
Yeah, it is. Let's see. Hold on. All right. I'm seeing some more news.
I got so much of this freaking. Speaking of which,
can I throw out one other? Can I throw out one weird more running back name that I have a little bit of that I just forgot to mention?
Sure.
Because I feel like we should play a little. It feels so stupid because he's literally not even their main running back at the moment, but it could change with them in a second. I feel like one of the Chiefs running backs, and I just threw Clyde Edwards-Helaire into a couple lineups. I don't know. I just have a feeling that they could end up using him more in this game, and it's very speculative. It's for large fields.
Well. I will say that the case I was going to make, and I just kind of lost track of it, was I think in a weird way, like Edwards-Helaire gets a little bit of a bump from Hardman being out. Because Hardman gets these end arounds and gets these running plays and stuff like that sometimes, especially around the goal line. So I actually think that Edwards-Helaire is a pretty good player.
The only problem is that the split carries with the Pacheco and the big.
There's plenty of problems with it, but I mean,
Yeah. No, I'm just throwing it. Yeah, but I like I said, I think that we both touched on it. I'm very worried about one of these other KC receivers getting there and none of the main guys doing it today. We just seen Mahomes do this so many times,
Yeah.
Sky Moore or Justin Watson, but I can't bring it in my heart to play those guys as fourth and fifth.
Well, and he said it at the the beginning of the season. He said, listen, fantasy. I hope you guys aren't mad at me. People that play me in fantasy because they're going to be all exposure's going to be all over the place.
Right, and that's what they do. All right, I'm going to get out of here and finish my build sheets. Are you good? Anything else?
You can leave it up here. I mean, I'm just really. I'll check back on my chat, but you can call it here. People are going to go on other sites anyway. It's fine.
Okay, I'm going to go jump in and just finish my builds. But good luck today, buddy. I hope that you win $1 million again, almost win $1 million again. But I hope you come at least one step closer.
I understand.
All right, good luck to everybody out there. Hopefully, screenshots later on in the Discord.